Let's imagine something. It's Friday evening. You just finished your day at the office and you're heading downtown with your friends to grab a drink. And while you're working with your friends and you start talking, all of a sudden you realize that you already feel like you already experienced that situation before. Well, this is what the science calls a déjà vu. And the chances you already experienced that are actually quite high. But this is fine, it always happened to one of us. But what if I tell you there is an even worse version of that déjà vu? Well, let's take the same story. But instead of being Friday evening, it's Wednesday and you're at the office. And you just receive a request from a client which asks you to develop a custom interface on top of the existing one. And while you're building this interface, you realize that it's quite similar to something you built before. But unfortunately, the change you already applied in a previous project was scoped within a specific CSS selector, or even worse, it was scoped within a specific module. And so all of a sudden, you realize that what you built cannot be reused. Well, this is what I call the developer's déjà vu, and this one, trust me, is even worse and you don't want to experience it. Hello everyone, my name is Chrysanthe. I'm a UI designer here at Odoo. And just like you, I spent most of my time building on top of the UI. And we're gonna be honest, sometimes it can be tricky. Yes, I understand what you can experience. So the idea of this talk is to walk you through the solution we developed within Odoo and how you can apply some of the solution or some of this workflow to your specific use cases. So just to give you a quick overview, I'm part of the design team. As I said, we're a team of 10 people. We are in charge of the UI of the backend and the front end, and we work in a close collaboration with developers to bring features to life. I think you guys already saw a lot of new features we work on, but just to give you a quick overview of what we worked on for version 19, here are some features we worked on. I won't go through all of them, but the commerce redesign, the redesign of VoIP, some UX improvements, etc. If you have questions during this talk at any time, feel free to write them in the pad. I took the liberty to structure the pad in 3 sections. So you have a section for the question related to the talk. There is another one for a question related to the design within Odoo. I won't be able to answer them right now, but we can discuss them later. And there is a last one about feedbacks. So if you guys have any feedbacks, for example, some flaws you experience within the software or whatever, feel free to write it down, and we got a stand at developer zone, so we can discuss that later. It would be a pleasure for us to discuss with you. So first of all, we need to talk about what is consistency exactly. So before we define why it's important, we just need to go through what is it exactly. Well, what is consistency? It's actually 3 things. Predictability. So predictability is important because when you navigate something like within Odoo and you used to change apps every time, you don't want to relearn the flow every time. If you're watching a Kanban view, you expect that the Kanban view in project look the same as in accounting. You don't want to relearn pattern. This is terrible. It's familiarity. This is more internal, but for our developers, it means that a component will look the same in different modules as well. So basically what we do, we design once a component and then we reuse it every time so developers don't have to keep in touch with all the new features we introduce in a component. And lastly, consistency is scalability. So you guys might not experience it, I don't know, it depends on your use case, feel free to tell me, but scalability is basically the ability to go larger with your project. So let's say you design once a search component and you want to reuse it in 10 different modules. Well, if you do not design it correctly, you won't be able to reuse it correctly because you will have to maintain 10 occurrences of the same component. And this becomes a nightmare. So now that we agree on what is consistency exactly, this is the last section about the theory, I promise. We need to talk about the origin of consistency. And again, I do identify three things. The first one is this kind of motto. So I guess you guys are familiar with this slide. It's from Mark Zuckerberg. And this is something that has been quite a huge motto in the tech industry. We do apply the same at Odoo sometimes, I have to admit it. So this is basically the idea that we need to move fast and to break things in order to create innovation. And while this is fine, we do it at Odoo, I told you. You need to keep in mind that if you break something, you need to fix it later. You cannot say that we will fix it in 2 versions. It wouldn't be suitable for the client. So if you do use this kind of motto, keep in mind that everything needs to be fixed at some point. And so the earlier, the better. Well, a second thing, this is an old picture of Fabien actually, is that I've seen like a shift in the tech industry over the last decades. We went from company built around 3 or 4 people having a vision about what should be an ERP, what should be the perfect phone or whatever, to larger companies. So here is an article which was published in the Belgian press about Odoo. And basically it explained that we plan to increase the number of employees. So as you can see, we plan to go from 600 to 1,500, which is quite huge. And so what I want to tell you here is that what you can apply with 5 or 6 employees cannot be applied with 100 or 1,000. You need to set up workflow, you need to set up good practice, you need to define how you want to approach the things to ensure that your project will be scalable. I will quickly go over this one, but in the same vibe of the move fast and break things, it's this idea of quality versus quantity. So whether you should take your time and ship one perfect project or ship multiple projects with a lower quality. I would like to reuse a story which is in the Atomic Habits book. Quite interesting if you didn't read it. Basically, it goes like this. So on the first day of class, a teacher separates his classroom in 2 groups. The first group is the quality one, and their job is to take one picture over the year, but it has to be perfect. On the other side, you have the quantity group, and their mission is to take as many pictures as possible, but they don't have to worry about the quality. Unsurprisingly, at the end of the year, the quantity group come up with a better result than the quality one. Well, there are multiple reasons to that, but I think the main one is the fact that when you work on quantity, you get to iterate. So when you do something like 1,000 times, you get to improve the process, you get to understand what was wrong, and so you improve. And at the end of the day, you reach something perfect. So what I want to highlight is that it's okay to produce a large amount of work, and it's actually better, but try to learn what was wrong and what you learned during the project so you can adapt for the next one. So if you're still with me, these are like 3 takeaways I would like you guys to remember at the end of this session. So if you get this to your mind, basically you got the idea. So build for reuse. The idea is that you want to create components if you think that you will reuse this in the future. So for example, let's say you're working on your clients wants to create like a model to validate an operation. This is a common pattern, so you might reuse it later. So you might want to create a component for that. Standardize early. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. If you got something in your system that is similar or doing something quite identical, I cannot say anything else that try to reuse it. And then try to see what can be adapted, what can be added, removed, or whatever. And the last thing is to test, to refine, and to repeat. So again, you cannot come up with something perfect in the first iteration. So you will need to test, you will need to refine, you will need to repeat. But it's fine, it's part of the process, and this is something we apply at Odoo as well. So what is the pain of inconsistency exactly? Well, first of all, consistency is not just a designer thing, let's be honest. So it's not something we spend days to discuss about whether the button should be red, blue, yellow, or whatever. It's the job of partners, of developers, to take this topic and to push forward. So we cannot assume that a designer will fix the design or we will adapt later. We need to own this topic and to bring consistency to speed up the process. If you do not have a consistent UI in your project, you will see that it's a mess. You need to maintain multiple components. You need to work twice. You increase the bugs, so it's not viable. So really, this one, it's important. Here is a quick example with our most famous component, the button. So here is how a button looks like in Odoo. So pretty standard. And if we take a look at the DOM, we can see that we have a button tag with two classes. So btn, which is the default one, and btn primary, which will make the button purple. Inside of it, we have the button label, of course, which is important. And so this is basically the usual button we use. But what if I tell you that this button is another one? Well, they look exactly the same. You cannot see any difference. But the difference is actually hidden. If we take a look at this button, we can see that we do not have the button tag anymore. We have a span with a class btn, which is right. But then we have this piece of code. And what this is doing is that it is actually defining the style of the button, but in CSS file. So basically, everything we are creating here, if it's scoped within a specific module, will be lost. You won't be able to style all the button in the same way. Another example to show you that you can have flexibility while having a coherent design is this one. So we still have the button tag, we have the classes as before, but we also have my button, which is a custom class. And this classes is actually used to tweak btn border radius. So this is a CSS variable, and we will go through this later, but basically what it's saying is that the border radius property of the button should be 100 pixels. So you can have something which is rigid, I would say, so we got the default button, but we still allow some flexibility with the CSS variables, which is quite interesting. Now, this is only a button, so it's quite inoffensive. But here are some numbers about the R&D at Odoo. We have more than 350 developers, more than 600 modules in the community, more than 20 developers team, and 3 offices. So you can imagine that at the scale of Odoo, if we start having this inconsistency, it becomes a mess. And what is a mess for us becomes a mess for the clients because they are lost. They cannot navigate. They cannot use the software as efficiently as they should. Quite related, but when we introduced the new design in version 17, we used to do a large CSS cleanup. And this is an example of a diff we managed to reach. So basically, we removed 700 lines and we added 201. So all those lines we removed were actually custom CSS implemented to try to override default classes. So it's important to be educated and to keep in mind that if you want to achieve something in CSS, there are a lot of chances we have default classes which achieve the same result. And if you want to learn more about this, we do use Bootstrap at Odoo, the version 5.3. So you can have a look at the documentation. We have all the classes we use listed there. And we also have custom ones, but this one we'll dive into later. So what are the highlights of inconsistencies? First, it wasted time. We showed that with multiple buttons, you need to maintain each of them, so it's a waste of time. It creates bugs, because if you update the default primary button, well, the one we showed before won't be updated. So you will have two different design of buttons existing in your interface, which is terrible. On the last point, it confused users. So again, if you have multiple interface using the same components but with different design, it's confusing for users. They cannot navigate as they would like to. They have to relearn pattern every time. And when you're doing this 8 hours a day, it's quite confusing. You don't want to experience it, honestly. So now that we've seen some theory, if you're still with me, we're gonna see how we can build reusable UI. So to show you consistency in action, this is actually the VOAP redesign we shipped in version 19. So it's brand new, we had talked about that, and as you can see, we have at the bottom a bottom bar. And so this bottom bar basically allows users to navigate between the different tabs, so they can see their contact, their activities, the recent call they made. And on the right, we have the discuss module, which also has a bottom bar. And basically you can see the behavior is the same. So if you click on chat, you expect to open another tab. Same for channel, same for shared. But what's confusing is that these two components do not share the same design. And so as simple as that, as you can see here on the right, we apply the same styling to the component. And it's already much more predictable for users. They understand, they have the feeling that they already saw that component before. And it did, they look the same, they work the same. So we reduce the amount of time needed for the user to understand the behavior. So how does it work at Odoo exactly? Well, we have like 4 steps in the process. First, we design components. To do so, we use variables and patterns. We'll see that later. After that, the component is used by developers to create features. While the developers create features with the components, well, they provide us feedback. Or maybe we can identify some flaws according to how they use the components. And this feedback comes back to us, and so we improve the design of the component, and we loop in that circle. So we redesign the component, we update the variables, we receive other feedback, etc. Here is an example of how it can look like. So you might have recognized the sys tray in Odoo, so it's the top bar at the right you have, which is everywhere in the backend. And as you can see, we have a special item with a different hover state. Well, this hover state actually fixes an issue. The issue, as you can see, is that we do not have any hover effect on the buttons. So while you put your cursor on the item, there is no way to understand that you're over that item. And so here, what is interesting is to see that the developers took the component and they adapted it to fix an issue we had. And so with that in mind, on our side in the design team, well, we do get their fix and we apply it on the component instead. So here, as you can see, we removed the gray background introduced by the developers, but instead we fixed the component. And so this is way better because what developers fix from one item, we fix it globally. And so this is extremely powerful. It's actually 4 lines of CSS, and we fix the entire flows. So let's dive into the backend maybe to see how it works exactly. So there are 3 things: variables and token. This is like the core of Odoo. Component and snippets, which is a component, of course, as you might have guessed, which use these variables and this token to create a layout. And then we have patterns and templates. So you're familiar with that. It's everything like form view, Kanban view, list view, graph view. So all those views reuse component. These components use variables. And so these are the 3 layers of design within Odoo. So if we take a look at the variables, we can see here, for example, so we are in the core of variables within Odoo. So I might zoom in so you get to see better. So basically here is a list of variables we define. So if we have a look, we can see that we define the primary color, which is for community light purple. We also define some color for enterprise. We define color for danger, warning, info, whatever. And so this is the core of Odoo. Basically, if we search for this variable, so if I go here and search for a community color, we can see that this variable is reused in different places. And so what this does is that we define the variable once and then we reuse it everywhere. So if we change this value, let's say we change it to red, well, all the other occurrences we can see will change to red as well. So here you can see it became red, and this one as well. So these are like the easiest way to deal with things. If we have a look, this one is interesting. If we have a look at these variables, which is basically the background of view within Odoo, we can see that if I change it to blue, light blue maybe for your eyes would be better. If I go here and refresh, we can see that automatically some components change. And so what is happening in the backend is that we define that the Kanban card will use the background color variable for their backgrounds. Same thing for the control panel, we define that the background will be equal to OView background color. And this is especially interesting when you work on dark mode, for example, because let's say we define it to red here. Well, if we go in the dark mode files, which is here, you can see that we can set it to another value. So if I set it to blue, oops, let's refresh. We can see that we have a red background here. And if I switch in dark mode, we can see that we have the blue one. So you can already see the power of variables. They're everywhere. They're used in every single piece of UI of Odoo, and they really empowers developers. If I get back to my slides. If you're curious to learn more about variables, my colleague Stefano gave a talk 2 years ago. It's still very up to date. And this is basically about customizing variables to customize the look of Odoo. I'm telling you this, guys, because I met a developers at the Developer Zone earlier in the day, and he wanted to change the color of all the buttons within Odoo. And I showed him that it was quite straightforward. You just need to tweak one variable. And so if you have like 30 minutes to watch a talk, I definitely recommend this one. It's very interesting. Component. So I told you that components reuse variables. Well, we briefly went over it when we checked the use of OView background color, if you remember. So we saw that the Kanban was using it. Oops. So we can see here that we have some things that reuse that value. For example, I saw the list view, which is let's take one randomly. For example, this one, not this one. Well, this one, for example. We can see here that we are in a specific file, which is handling some tags. And here we reuse that variables. So we use variables within a specific component to achieve a specific look and feel. Another example of component, you might be more familiar with this one because it's not CSS related. It's the control panel. So basically, this panel, which is everywhere within Odoo, is actually defined into this file. So as you can see, we have a div, which is the main component. We have the drop down. So if we go here in mobile, oops, we can see that we have a drop down, and everything is defined here. So we get some specific rules. If we don't have a breadcrumb, if we are in a mobile, if we are not on a mobile, if we have specific actions, we display it. And so here you can see that we have a component, which is the control panel, and it's quite modular, so you can adapt it to your needs. You can toggle some slots, so if you have specific buttons you want to show or hide, you can define it here. And basically what's happening is that you get the default component from Odoo, and then you can tweak it according to your needs. If we take a look maybe at another example, which is the patterns. If we look for patterns within Odoo, we can maybe check this one. So this one is a view, which is the employee form view. So I will open it on the side so you can see it live. Oops. So here we are in the form view of an employee. So if we look at the code, we can see that we have a sheet, and so this sheet is actually the gray background you can see here. So what we are doing is that we are taking the default component, the sheet, and we're using it into the UI. And this sheet comes with existing DOM. For example, here we have the button box, which is basically containing different buttons, which allows users to navigate quickly. And if we look at this one, we can see that it's the history one. And if we look at the UI, we can see that it's here. So starting from the default component, you can adapt it to display 1 button, 2 buttons, 3 buttons, no buttons. Everything is doable, you just need to adapt the default component to your needs. Then if we look a bit down, we can see that we have the avatar, which is defined, which uses some field for the images, to show the present status, to show the work emails, some contact information, whatever. We get this line, which is basically displaying a ribbon if you archive the employee. I think we can do it on the fly, yes, if we do this. All right, so you can see the ribbon. And so basically, with one line, we call a default component and we implement it into the UI. And I realized I forgot something, but about variables. I want to show you guys a quick example. So here is the code of the e-commerce redesign we worked on with the team in version 19. And as you can see, we have a lot of CSS variables. So for example here, we have the product card, which is basically one item into the e-commerce. Oops. So if we go to e-commerce, quite slow, but we can see that we have a list of products, right? So this is a product card, this one another, etc. And we can see that we toggle some specific styling with CSS variables. So for example here, we say that the flex direction, so the direction of the layout will be colon, so it will go vertically. But if we define the variable, it can go in another one. So basically, if we do not define the variable, it will always go vertically. But if you want to have a specific layout with an horizontal direction, well, all you get to do is to change that variables into horizontal. And so I think we might have some occurrences, right? So here, for example, of course, we have the list layout. And in a list, you don't want items to show information with an item to show vertically, you want them horizontally. So if we go back to the shop page, if I can do this. Well, if we change the layout to a list one, well, you can see that all the information are displayed horizontally. And so simply by tweaking a variable, well, we are able to achieve a multitude of layouts. And so this is quite powerful. You can see that we use this a lot. It's very powerful. And again, if you are curious to learn more about variables, you can come chat with us. We can explain you how it works exactly, and we can have a chat to see how you can implement this into your project. Oops, let's go back to the slides. So to wrap it up, I think one key information to keep in mind is that consistency is a marathon. So I explained you guys that you cannot achieve something perfect in the first iteration. You will need to refine, you will need to fail, and it's okay to fail because you will learn some stuff, you will evolve. And so what I want you to keep in mind is that it will take time, of course. You might fail on some project, but you will see that the outcome is that you will save a lot of time to your teams. You will be able to quick start a project very fast. And this is like a huge amount of time you will save. So again, the three principles we saw before, build for reuse, standardize early enough, test, refine, repeat. So I will go quickly over them again, but build for reuse. Now that I show you how it works exactly, you can see that we create components once, then we reuse them everywhere, so we avoid having bugs. We avoid maintaining multiple times the same layout or the same components. Standardize early, so you saw that we define a set of variables in CSS, and these variables will be used everywhere across Odoo to avoid custom values. So basically, if you want your button to look purple, you will call the variable related to the purple. You won't have to define an hexadecimal color code or whatever. And test, refine, and repeat. Well, I show you that you might need to create multiple iterations to achieve the perfect result, but this is how you learn. I mean, it happens quite a lot to me as well, that I'm working on a UI and I need to refine, I need to discuss this with my colleagues to see that I might be wrong and it's not the right way to do it. But I think it's important to keep that in mind. Really, this one, quite important in my opinion. I'm a bit early on the timing actually. I think I was a bit nervous, so I might have speed up. But if you guys have any question or any maybe more generic one about design or the interface or new features from Odoo 19, whatever, we have a lot of time actually, so it might be the occasion for you to ask your question. Would be a pleasure to answer. So I'm putting this again if you want to ask your question.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. We have a few questions.
Mm-hmm.
We'll tackle them right now.
Yes.
First, can you please share and publish on Figma the design system of Odoo? It will help a lot of designers and developers when customization are needed.
Yes, sure. This is something actually we briefly talk about. For now, we do have something for the front end, which is created by the PS design team, so the web designer team of Odoo. What they have is that they have a backbone which is useful for partners if they want to quick start a website for the clients. For the backend, currently we do not have such a file, but this is something we will work on in the future.
Okay, thank you. Can we, as a partner, ensure that actions are consistently named and translated into Odoo?
How can we ensure that actions are correctly named and translated?
For example, cancel vs discard buttons.
Oh, okay. This one is more technical. I think the best chances to get an answer would be to ask the translation team. I do not think they have a stand at the developer zone, but if the person who asked the question is still in the room, you can come find me after the talk and I can show you one person related to the translation team within Odoo and they will answer your question, because this is quite technical. It's related to the transition file, I believe. So this is not something really design related.
Okay, thank you. Next question: where can we find a list of of all available widgets and components?
Well, you might be able to find a list in the Odoo documentation. Probably not all, but I think there is a lot of chances you find them directly in the code, honestly. But I think the documentation is a good place to start with. We might have something. We might have most of the components listed there, actually.
Okay, and are they all available on the front end?
I mean, all the components, right?
Widgets and components, yes.
No. We do have separated bundles, so we do not use all the components on the front end, of course. But maybe there is a use case. I mean, if the person has a use case for it, I would be happy to discuss about that to see what's the use case and how we could solve it.
Okay, great. In the design process, do you do user tests or other evaluating methods before pass the components to development team? And how do you involve user and obtain user feedback?
Sure. So basically, it's a bit specific, but the design process at Odoo is the following. We have product owners, which are in charge of the development team, and they're in charge of leading the features of the software. So these product owners comes with features, of course. They come to find us with some ideas they have. Sometimes they do user testing before that to evaluate whether a feature is needed or not. But usually what happens is that we design something which is integrated by the developers. And after that, product owners organize testing days, for example. So we sometimes bring a person to the farms, so basically the office for developers, and we bring people to test the new features we design and we worked on. So I would say we involve users in two different places. And yeah, of course, even at the event, I mean, I got to chat about some usability improvement, and we try to keep in touch with the users as much as we can.
Okay, makes sense. To come back, because there is a new question concerning the tool created ones.
Yes.
Portal and backend CSS are based on the same variables. Are there any plans to separate portal design from backend design?
I don't think there is something planned. It's more something related to the framework, honestly, so I don't really have the answers. But what I want to highlight is that I faced an issue once in the front end, which was basically variables coming from Portal, which was overriding the design within the front end. And of course, this is an issue. So this is something we will need to fix on our side. But about the bundles and the way files are loaded, honestly, I don't have the answer right now. I will need to think about it and to maybe check with framework if there's something planned.
Okay, thank you. To come back to the design-related questions,
yes.
Will there be a redesign in the future of the module views?
The module views? I don't know. I don't know if I can talk about it. Well, I won't talk about it right now. But look, this is the fact. We did make like a huge improvement between version 17 and version 16. I think you guys saw it. But design is something we work on constantly. So I cannot say that it will change, but I cannot say it won't change. So you will have to find out and to come back next year to see if something changed. We'll see.
Okay, quite mysterious. Next question. For user, the fact that any area are right is difficult to know where to find active fields. Is it manageable to change that?
Yes. If this is specifically related to fields, we do have something. I'm not sure it's in field.scss. Yes. So we do have some variables which are related to fields and which define the look of the fields. So for example, within Odoo, When you're on desktop, you can see that we do not show the border of a field except if you hover the field in question. So everything is related to CSS variables. So again, everything is customizable. If you need to adapt it, if you need to change one colors, this is doable. You can actually come to the booth later on and we can check this together. And yes, this is definitely doable.
Thank you. Will there ever be Tailwind support?
Well, we've been sticking with Bootstrap for a long time, and we actually upgraded to version 5.3 this year. So for now, I think we stick with Bootstrap. But of course, maybe there are some interesting things to take from Tailwind. So yeah, we keep an eye on it, but there is no plan right now.
Thank you. Regarding future-proofing our customer UIs and making them migration compatible between Odoo versions, would you recommend using pure CSS styling? What about regarding JavaScript UI components?
I think using CSS is okay. What I would advise you to do is to ensure that you stick to standard things as much as possible. So we saw that everything in Odoo is related to variables, which are defined once and then used in other places. So as long as you don't use custom CSS and you refer to variable, you should be fine, honestly. Honestly, using JavaScript for components will be better, of course, but I mean, using style is okay as long as you don't use arbitrary values. You should be fine.
Okay, let's end up with the questions concerning the feedbacks.
Yes.
The login and sign up forms feel inconsistent in comparison to other forms, for example, account details on the front end.
Yes. If I'm not wrong, I think one of the key differences is that one of them is in between the two environments. I think the login form might be like between the back and the front end. We do have plans to actually adapt the screen, so hopefully it should be fixed in a near future. But we do have plans to change that actually, so probably will be fixed.
Okay, another feedback on the
Yes.
front end. Required fields are marked by a bold label. This feels unnatural since it's not that common in other websites. The asterisk symbol is a more universal known design language.
Can you repeat the question? So what is the symbol in use?
This feels unnatural since it's not a common in other websites. The asterisk symbol is a more universal known design language.
Okay, so
Concerning on the front end, required fields are marked by a bold label.
Oh, really? Okay. I don't know. Yes, I do have a form here. Well, maybe this one is not the right example because we do have an asterisk here.
Yeah, it looks like.
But maybe if you're thinking on something else, or maybe I'm wrong, you can come and find me and I will try to see what we are talking about.
He's adding some comments. He's looking from account details form.
Oh, okay. Yips. 1 second.
He or she, sorry.
So I guess we are talking about... I'm not sure. Honestly, if the person is still there, I would prefer you come and find me because I'm thinking about this form, but maybe it's not this one. So please come and find me and we will see together what we're referring to.
Okay, another feedback before the last one. Portal and backend CSS are based on the same variables.
Yeah, I think we already...
Yeah, okay, wait. Absolutely. So the last one, regarding future-proofing our customer UIs and making them migration compatible between Odoo
Yes.
versions,
You also...
tackled
yeah.
this. Okay, there are some questions that haven't been answered by speaking, but you can check on the pad. Some of them have been
Okay, because
answered by
we-
some
yeah.
colleague, I think.
because we still have some time, so... I mean, if there is nothing...
No, but there have been some answers to those questions. So
Okay.
I guess we have tackled all of them.
Okay.
I'll check to make sure. I don't know if you guys know the last one concerning the total created questions. Is there a reference resource online for Odoo design system?
Is there a reference resource online for Odoo design system? So we briefly talked about that when we answered the question about the design system. Currently, we do have some documentation. We do have some documentation about CSS. So, for example, here it's not the right example, but it's about inheritance and how we can customize the variables. Again, for the design system, this is not something we have currently, but this is not something we can say we won't have at some point. So we will think about it again.
Okay, thank you. I think we have tackled all the questions. Thank you for your presentation and your answers. I'll let you conclude.
Thank you. All right, so there's still 9 minutes left. So if you guys still want to discuss things or whatever, pass some feedback, feel free to do it. We'd be happy to answer some questions left. Thank you, guys.